Let's do an evaluation of your organization's community engagement strategy. You probably landed on this video because you work for a company or organization that has decided to develop an intentional strategy for doing more community engagement or some form of community outreach, marketing, or give back. The problem is most strategic plans of any sort fail within the first year. There are a couple reasons for this on a high level as to why strategic plans don't work. Some of it is because they're not realistic, they weren't well developed, etc., etc. But today, let's think about your community engagement strategy specifically. I want to talk about two common reasons that community engagement strategies fail to get the traction that organizations hope when they first put the energy into building them. But first, I want to tell you a story of a client of mine that has won awards. They've gotten attention from McKinsey Scott, and they just do an excellent job delivering their services to their community. What sets this particular client apart in my mind is that they approached me not because I showed them a pathway or a plan as to how to build a program that they want, but that they had an understanding of the elements that go into a strong and successful community engagement strategy. And they reached out to me to help them do the legwork and to build that plan. So this organization was successful in its community, was delivering services. As I mentioned, they'd won funding unsolicited from McKinsey Scott. It was a total surprise to them. And they're just known for doing great work. When they approached me, they came to me and said, we want to expand to this nearby county. We think we know some things about it, but we need help validating it and making sure that we understand what's really happening here, because we know that we can't go in with our current resources and deliver the full scope of our services. So we want to make sure that the services that we are delivering are the ones that are going to be most effective in this particular county that has some different demographics and different statistics than the county we're currently operating in. So over the course of the year, I worked with this organization to help them identify key stakeholders, key challenges, and key gaps, and then match that to the organization's resources. In the next phase, we built community surveys and went out to the community completely cold to people that the organization didn't have connections with, to partners to do some outreach to their networks and circles, to gauge from people living in that particular county their awareness of the services that were already there and the needs that they felt like they had in terms of the service that this particular organization provided. At the end of that survey, we looked at the results, we looked at what they were thinking about doing, and we identified one or two approaches that was going to work for this organization that was actually different from what they were doing where they currently were. It took into account those policy dynamics that were specific to the new county. It took into account some of the statistical demographics that were different, such as income level or race, predominant population in the community, who the key players in this new community were. And by the end of that, we took a look at it and said, you're actually ready to go into this county. It's just a matter of time and when you're ready to dedicate the resources. They did a really good job up front of understanding that actually engaging the community before building the community engagement strategy was the real key to successful outcomes. So I partnered with them to help them understand and deliver on what they needed to deliver in this new area that they were considering expanding to. However, many community engagement strategies do tend to not work out as hoped when an organization decides to implement them. In this case, let's think about this in the context of a fairly large, well-established organization, one that has had some success in the product and service or service that it's offering already. An organization that has some level of strong brand reputation already and is likely doing some type of community work or thinking thoughtfully about outreach to the community through its marketing strategy already. What I see commonly happen is these organizations then decide to elevate that or do something new and want to take it a step further. So they often decide to go into a community with a new engagement strategy, and then it's just not working the way that they hoped. They're disappointed by the results. They feel like it's not getting what's needed. And there are two common reasons that this happens. So let's talk about those two reasons so that you can identify whether your organization might be falling into one of these two traps in your community engagement program. When you put together a community engagement program, yes, it does have community good, but you do want it to bring a return to the organization itself. You want to get some benefit from the effort that you're putting in. That benefit could be in the form of new relationships or new stakeholders. That benefit could be in the form of better brand reputation, more goodwill, more sales, more funding. There are multiple positive outcomes that could come from a community engagement strategy. But a community engagement strategy takes a different approach. Rather than being exactly like marketing, it's going into that community and understanding the needs of that specific community before beginning to build the program. The common misconception that I see most often, number one, is what I like to call the goodwill fallacy. It's the idea that this community engagement strategy that the organization is implementing has a good cause, has a good purpose, and so therefore people are going to get behind it and get excited about it just because it has a good mission. And as a result, these same companies don't always put in the same due diligence or the same rigor that they would for any other traditional, typical product or service launch. Because it's a softer approach or a community goodwill program, it's done without foresight, more heart than with governance and due diligence process. And that's okay. It's okay to want to solve a problem in your community, to want to engage in the community. The challenge comes when you are expecting that return from the program, but you're taking a scattershot approach because there wasn't a strong strategy built in the first place. Many companies fall into the perspective of build it and they will come. We've got a good program. We've got a good cause. We're going to put the word out and people will naturally be attracted to it. That's not the case. Your strategy needs process, planning, systems, and structure behind it in order to be successful. In some cases, that due diligence might reveal that there's a community partner or established organization that you could work with, that you could support and help grow. Maybe that's through sitting on a board. Maybe that's through giving funding or some other similar type of strategy, or one that's totally unique and creative. But there's this other organization that already exists in the community doing good work that people are going to and know. And so your work is a replication or duplication. The due diligence process, just like you would in any other business implementation, can reveal that for you. You want to avoid that goodwill fallacy, that idea that people are going to be attracted to your cause just because it's a meaningful, purposeful cause. You still have to communicate and put resources behind it. The second common misconception that I see is related to the goodwill fallacy, putting insufficient resources behind a community engagement program. When building your strategy, you will get out of it the equivalent of what you put into it as an organization. Think of it this way. You might be a company with millions of dollars in profit in a year, but your new program has a relatively small budget or somebody working on that program part-time. You don't have the full-time dedicated resources to get the deliverables out of that particular program that you are anticipating. Just because your organization has a reputation and some brand credibility behind it doesn't necessarily mean your new program does. When you're implementing this new program, you're essentially building a startup culture. You can borrow from some of the company's larger resources, such as the marketing team or the infrastructure or the accounting team, but you're still incubating a new program. Sometimes what I see is executives in companies, particularly larger companies that are trying to start some type of goodwill or community outreach program, fail to remember that this is a startup culture. A startup culture is a very different type of process, very different type of orientation than a well-established existing organization is. You're building the engine from scratch. You don't have that going already. I was speaking to a friend who's looking to start a new business. He came from some very large corporations and expressed some concern about sales in the new environment as he gets started. And I shared with him, as I share with many of my clients, it's important to have proper expectations. Just because you have an established company, you've got to go through the startup phase. You can't skip that infrastructure, systems, or processes stage when building a program. And if you don't put the resources behind it, you're going to get exactly the type of results that you invested. If you're a multi-million-dollar business, then you need to not necessarily put millions of dollars into the program, but you need to scale your expectations to the investment that you're putting in the program in the first place. So what is the answer to solving these two common misconceptions, the goodwill fallacy and the startup culture phase of beginning a community engagement program? Ultimately, the answer is good business planning, good due diligence, good systems, and good strategy. At the end of the day, the new program requires some process. It requires some thought. It requires some clarity as to where the organization's going to go. Put the time and effort into the community engagement program and align your expectations to the amount of time and investment you're going to put into it. Commit to the program just like you would any other product or service. I promise community engagement and goodwill programs do have very significant returns and can be a very large competitive advantage when you take it seriously and when you commit to building a program that is designed to last for the long term. Profound Hope Industries works with mission-driven organizations to combine local policy and community insight into strategic, purposeful plans that build engagement, create efficiencies, and get you the results that you desire. We've put together a 4-part process that will help your organization build the type of programs and the type of implementation that will get results. If you're interested in learning more, click the link below. And as always, like and subscribe and follow along so we can continue making content to help you build strong and successful strategies.